Juliet Stipeche, Mayor Sylvester Turner's Director of Education for the City of Houston. Thank you for joining us for the Mayor's Office of Education's special report on equity empowering Houston. 2020 has proven to be one of the most challenging years on record, with COVID-19 driving a dramatic upheaval in our social, economic, and educational experience. We've had to learn to mask up, engage in physical distancing, wash our hands, and use hand sanitizers frequently. We've changed the habits in our daily life to save the lives of others. As Houstonians, our can-do spirit makes us Houston strong, and we're learning new, more resilient ways to interact with each other using technology to build our human capacity. Today, we're going to take a closer look at our beloved Houston, where we've been and what the future has in store for us. Professor Stephen Klineberg is the founding director of the Kinder Institute for Urban Research and a professor emeritus of sociology at Rice University. He's Houston's seer, sage, and prognosticator, and the author of a revealing new book, Prophetic City, Houston on the Cusp of a Changing America. Professor Klineberg met with us virtually to discuss our Houston, which he's been studying for almost 40 years with Rice, Kinder's Houston Area Survey. Councilmember Cisneros and I were blessed to spend some time with him to chat about Houston's past and our future.
So, Professor Klineberg, in your book, Prophetic Houston, education is probably the biggest underlying theme of your book. And we are so happy to have you with us today so that you can help explain why that is.
Okay. No, you bet. I mean, it's impossible not to come. You know, someone once said that education is not a panacea, but if we get it right, it will solve almost all of our major problems. What we're dealing with are the two fundamental revolutionary changes that have made the 21st century a different place. One is the loss of the good blue-collar jobs that have either been outsourced or roboticized. Education is now the critical determinant of a person's ability to earn enough money to support a family in the new global knowledge-based economy of the 21st century. And Houston and Texas are at the bottom in their traditional spending on education. You didn't need education to make money in Texas. The big Texas fortunes were made from cotton, timber, cattle, sugar, oil. The source of wealth in the 21st century has less to do with natural resources and more to do with human resources, with knowledge and skills. And number two, this fundamental, irreversible transformation in the ethnic composition of the Houston, the Texas, and the American population. Houston is at the forefront of this central new reality where we are becoming a microcosm of all the world's people, of all the world's religions, all the world's ethnicities gathered in one remarkable place, called on to build something that has never existed before in human history, a truly successful, inclusive, equitable, united, multi-ethnic society, as I say, made up of all the religions, all the ethnicities of the world, gathered together in one remarkable place. So underlying all of this is education, because the other fundamental reality is the relationship between ethnicity and age. We are watching the remarkable aging of the baby boom generation, the 76 million American babies born between 1946 and 1964, when the rising tide lifted all boats, when the big, good blue-collar jobs in Houston was from Hughes Tool Company, Cameron Iron Works. You could drop out of high school with a strong right arm and expect to be able to make a middle-class wage. Those jobs have disappeared. And we're in this, but during that period, 76 million American babies were born. And those are the years when they celebrated the stay-at-home housewife mother in suburbia. Average American woman gave birth to 3.6 children, and the baby boom was launched upon the world. The leading edge of those 76 million babies turned 74 this year. And we're going to watch a literal doubling of the number of Americans over the age of 65, overwhelmingly Anglo babies, because that's who was here to be born in that period after World War II. And we're watching this fundamental transformation going through the system. By 2035, the youngest of those 76 million will have turned 65, heading off into the proverbial sunset, being replaced by a very different generation of Americans. And if everybody in Harris County today under the age of 20 not HISD, not inner city Houston, but of all the 4.6 million people in Harris County who are under the age of 20, who will be the workers and citizens and voters and taxpayers of Houston in the 21st century. Of everybody under the age of 20, 51% are Latinos, 19% are African Americans, 9% are Asians, 21% of everybody under 20 is African American or Latino. I'm sorry, 21% are Anglos. 70% are African American Latino. The two groups overwhelmingly most likely to be living in poverty. We know what poverty does to your ability to succeed in the public school system. It is a safe statement to make that if Houston's African American Latino young people are unprepared to succeed in the global knowledge economy of the 21st century, it is difficult to envision a prosperous future for Houston.
Well, Professor Klineberg, you have been studying the city of Houston for almost 40 years at the Kinder Institute for Urban Research. And we are so lucky that you have recently published a book on the city of Houston, The Prophetic City, Houston on the Cusp of a Changing America. We know that the city of Houston has just been through so many different challenges and changes from 1982 to where we are at present. What's your takeaway in these 40 years of working with Houston? What makes us a great city, and what is our greatest?
Well, that's what's so. It's hard to be pessimistic when you live in Houston, when you work in Houston. And the surveys just shows consistently and significantly increasing understanding of these issues. One of the key questions we asked back in the 1990s was, which of these statements come closest to your feelings about the public schools in Houston? The schools have enough money, if it was used wisely, to provide a quality education, or the schools will need significantly more money to provide a quality education, if it was used wisely. We all believe that. Plenty of money being spent, is being wasted. That's exactly what we all believed in the 1990s. 56% to 30% saying the schools have all the money they need but it's being wasted. And then during the first decade of the 21st century, it was a 50-50 split. So we stopped asking the question, came back in 2018, and now 55% the schools will need significantly more money, and only 35% saying they've got all they need. And we came back again this year, and it's even stronger at 59%. Clear sea change. The public understands we've got to spend more money. We've got to invest in education if we're going to be able to be successful. And the other striking question was one that we asked in 2018 and then again this year that said, are you in favor or opposed to increasing local taxes in order to provide universal preschool education for every child in Houston? Increasing local taxes, right? You start any question with that and whoa! 65% 2 years ago, 70% today. Favor of increasing local taxes to provide universal preschool education. We all know how critical that is, right? One of the moments of truth in education is third grade reading. If you're not reading at the third grade level in third grade, you are 4 times more likely to drop out of high school. The single most powerful predictor whether you can read at third grade level is, did you start kindergarten ready to learn to read? The brain is growing by 60%. You're internalizing figures and numbers and words. And rich kids start kindergarten 1.5 to 2 years ahead of poor kids. And that gap, it continues to grow in ways that are just critical to the opportunities that people can have to succeed in the new economy of the 21st century. So it's easy to see the public increasingly aware of these issues, concerned about it. Our great challenge in Houston is how to translate new awareness, new understandings with effective action, with investments that can move the needle. You know, and that's the great challenge. That's why I end the book with, the jury is out. The jury is out for Houston, and the jury is out for America. And it has to do with whether the wealthy and successful in America will recognize that our future depends on a much broader picture of who we are as Americans.
So looking at this, the city that has gone through so much, and how its people and the people coming into this community has helped us transform, has given us resilience.
Best restaurants in America.
Best restaurants. We got fantastic places to go shopping with things from all over the world here in Houston. How, in light of what's happened with COVID-19, what are your thoughts? I know we've always relied upon you to help us see where we've been and where we need to go. What are your thoughts on COVID-19's impact
Well, it's going to be very, very interesting. We do the survey in February of each year, so we'll be back in the field in February and March of 2021, after a year of this experience, because we did our last survey in 2020 in March 12th, and on March 16th was the time when the pandemic really hit and restaurants and bars were closed. So we have a year to measure how has this changed us and what has this done? And my sense is that it's accentuated the inequalities, clearly made it so much more evident how much more vulnerable African American Latino kids are and young people in general compared to Anglos and Asians, because what we're dealing with in America today is less an ethnic divide than a class divide. And you see that across the board, growing underclass and a growing middle class in all the different communities, predicated above all else on access to quality education. Clearly this has accentuated and laid bare the inequalities. 40% of the respondents in our survey last year said they could not come up with $400 to meet an emergency expense. Houston has the greatest medical complex in the world, and we have the highest percentage of children without health insurance of any major city in America. It's that inequality that is now at the front of our consciousness. We cannot build a sustainable city that doesn't do something about the deep inequalities in access to opportunity.
Right, and that inequality touches everything. It's it's not just education, but it's health, like you talk about. It's housing, it's economic opportunity, it's banking, it's our laws. It's how we've built our city. And so we need to rethink all that. And one of the things that you touch on a lot in your book is the urgency of this situation that we're in. I mean, and you wrote that before COVID, but it was already urgent. And so now, I mean, I think that this could be a turning point. With this pandemic and the economic crisis we're in. It could be what it took to really make those changes and to help people really understand the urgency.
Yes, no, thank you, Karla. Absolutely. And I think the value of the surveys is that it shows us that we're a different folk today than we were 10 years ago or 15 years ago. So political policy initiatives that would have been almost inconceivable 10 years ago are now something that the general public understands and recognizes the importance of. And so leadership matters tremendously, and finding solutions to the blockages that we have in the city in terms of the ability to raise monies to address critical problems we all recognize as critical. We need to find imaginative new ways to get resources and to get people. My claim is, okay, if we're not going to spend money on these issues, how do we spend people on these issues? How do we put people into volunteer opportunities? We had part of the great advantage of these young olds that we talk about, people in their 60s and 70s who are retired, have enormous things to offer, and the school system's making it more possible for volunteer work and for mentoring and all the things that can change the lives of just no child makes it out of poverty. It won't tell you that somebody intervened, somebody cared, somebody made a difference, somebody noticed, and no one makes it by themselves. And that's where those of us who have been so fortunate in the city have a real obligation and opportunity to reach out. We're not going to throw money at these problems. Let's throw people at these problems.
To build on that, that no one makes it by themselves. It's also the responsibility of all of us to make sure that happens. And I think helping to build that awareness and sense of responsibility in everyone. That we all have a role. And that as individuals and as different layers of government, and different organizations, we all own it, and need to look for ways to make that happen.
Yeah, no, and again, one of the things from the surveys is that people love the city. People believe in the city. Most came here reluctantly. Yuck, the job is in Houston. We'll go for a couple of years, and then discover this is just a wonderful place. And in our surveys, people complain because we invite them to about traffic, pollution, crime, the hot summers, the no mountains, the flying cockroaches. We say, well, how would you rate the Houston area as a place to live? It's a wonderful place to live. So we can build on that. There's a real well of affection and belief in Houston that we will need as we make the long-term sustained investments will enable us to build a successful city in the 21st century.
So I'm curious in terms of knowing that education is so critical to the future of Houston and this country. Seeing that COVID-19 has caused the schools to look at how to offer learning remotely, bridging this digital equity
divide, of course.
What are your thoughts on that, Professor?
Well, that too, we were talking earlier, part of what COVID has done is to lay bare much more clearly than before the realities of inequality and what that does. And nowhere is that clearer than now that we are inclusively remote, and this is probably going to continue, we think, even after a vaccine comes in, we all feel safe once again. We're still going to work from home. We're going to Zoom at different points in the day, and having access and comfort with those new technologies are absolutely critical to being able to participate in the learning process in the 21st century. So that's another piece of what's so critical, and it shouldn't be that hard to make sure that everybody has these devices. Again, that's one of the great promises of technology. They're getting faster, stronger, cheaper. We ought to get a first-rate computer in the hands of every single individual and child in the city.
And access to the internet.
Yes.
Wi-Fi and the training and know-how to be able to use it.
That's the great hope for America is that we have this new importance of learning and education that will go on for the rest of our lives, and we have great technologies to make that lifelong education continuing and being successful. All of it depending on bridging the digital divide. That's right.
Well, we want to thank you very much for your time. It's been a pleasure and an honor to be able to talk to you.
Thank you so much to both of you and for all that you're doing for all of us. It really is God's work and critical to what kind of city will we build in the years ahead.
Respond to the upcoming 2020 Census Survey online, by phone, or by mail. A complete count of all Houstonians helps our city secure federal dollars for roads, schools, healthcare, housing, and disaster recovery. By answering just 9 questions, your voice will help shape how Houston is represented by state and federal officials over the next 10 years. The census is easy and everyone counts. Your responses are safe and confidential. For more information, please visit 2020census.gov.
Hands now. Wash hands now. Wash hands now. Wash hands now. Hand washing is one of the best ways to stay healthy all year long.
I am pleased to announce today that the city and Microsoft have signed a memorandum of understanding to expand the groundbreaking digital alliance.
Mayor Sylvester Turner announced that the city of Houston has expanded its groundbreaking digital alliance with Microsoft to innovate in big data, artificial intelligence, and the digital economy. Microsoft brings to Houston Accelerate, a new program designed to address economic recovery through skills both underserved communities and reskilling the many Americans impacted by COVID-19. The collaboration is intended to create new economic opportunity, close equity and digital skills gaps, and prepare a workforce for the 21st century. Through coordination with corporate partners, K-12 school systems, and higher education providers, Microsoft is developing a holistic, game-changing plan for professional development, supports, and addressing the equity gap across the community.
But we are just getting started.
Houston is home to the world's most important medical breakthroughs. It's the energy capital of the world that is developing a more sustainable plan for the future. We're the home of NASA and sending the first person to the moon. We are Heart City that Microsoft is helping to become a smart city. Let's learn more from Raamel Mitchell, Director of Citizenship and Public Affairs, Microsoft, and Dr. Caesar Wright, President, Keno Eye Center for Visual Innovation.
So we had a fantastic announcement today with Mayor Turner and members of the community. And the announcement was about two things. One, there is signing or the renewal of our digital alliance, which is a partnership between Microsoft and the city to address economic development and recovery, to address STEM education and workforce and digital skilling, to address innovation. How do we partner together to drive innovation efforts throughout the city? And then we also announced Accelerate Houston. And Accelerate Houston is really exciting because it really doubles down in efforts related to digital skilling for a workforce. And our mission is to empower every individual and organization on the planet to achieve more. And so as we think about digital equity is just that. How do we provide opportunities, opportunities for access, opportunities for education, opportunities for skilling that will impact every community in Houston. And so this partnership really relies on the work that's being driven at the city, great work that's being done at the City of Houston itself, Office of Education, as you know, some of the work that's being done under Operation Connectivity with Gabby Rowe, the work that's being done with Space Center Houston and NASA Johnson Space Center, Keno Eye Center. We have a great partnership there. University of Houston, and so many others. HISD, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention HISD, but so many others in this community coming together.
Sending a message to our children and youth in the city of Houston. What did you learn that you would like to share with young people, especially given the importance of today's announcement?
Yeah.
What is it that you want to tell them to inspire them, given all the challenges that they've been experiencing with the changes in the school experience?
You know, one of the things that I will say with that is that these times are challenging, but it's important to be resilient. It's important to innovate. It's important to look at the world and see how you can change it, how you can literally, not to overquote, but how literally you can be the change. And so if you're a student that's sitting back at home and you're wondering, well, I don't have access, or I don't have a computer, or I'm trying to figure out how, I think the question is, where can you get access to a certain degree? Are there libraries nearby? Are there programs that are being offered by your school? If you're in HISD, there are some fantastic programs now that they're looking at. And so I think that's key. The other piece here is I wish, going to the heart of your question too, I wish when I was a kid I would have understood why, complex math was relevant. I had no idea why algebra or calculus or differential equations or any of that would apply to my life. I had no idea how that would apply to my life. It wasn't until college that I understood that actually it's about solving problems. The better you are at solving problems, the better that you can adjust to the challenges and circumstances that you have, whether you're on the job, whether you're in your life. And many of us have had to solve a lot of challenges and problems over the last 3, 4, 5 months.
Today at City Hall, they announced the extension or the expansion of the digital alliance between Microsoft and the City of Houston. At the center of that are some of the programs that I've developed with Microsoft, Microsoft Epic, which is for K-12 outreach and STEM education, and Microsoft FAST, which is future accelerated skills training. It's the workforce development and upskilling, helping people that have been impacted by COVID find new jobs, upskill, and really look at this as an opportunity to move to that next level job in technology.
Tell us, why is it important for young people to be interested in tech and STEM as future career options?
Every career is either STEM related or STEM enabled at this point. There's really nothing you can do. I had a girl that said, I want to be a makeup artist. How is that related to STEM? You apply augmented and virtual reality. Imagine you can be applying virtual makeup on a celebrity across the country, and she's got a mirror that's projecting the makeup onto her face. That's technology, and that's the future of makeup artists. Now imagine if it's saturated to that degree, every student in the country right now needs to have a fundamental understanding of both STEM and the importance of STEM, and then find their own path. Why is it exciting and fun for them? Which is really where I try to come in is to make it fun and make it connect to things that are interesting for every student. How does this relate to them personally?
So it's a fallacy to think that this is something separate and apart because it's so interwoven into everything that we will be doing, correct?
Right. There's nothing that we do today that doesn't in some way connect to emergent technologies, whether it's artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, data science. If you create an app, you can make $1 million creating an app, but you know what's worth more than that app you created is the information and the data that you gather through that app. So pretty much everything we do, it's so intertwined with technology that students are really disadvantaged if they don't recognize that and prepare for it.
Now, Mr. Ed, I know you've described how it's important for young people to think creatively, and so much of being a maven in tech or being inspired in tech is through what's going on in a person's mind, not necessarily the hardware that they have in front of them. Can you explain that a little more clearly to our students and our families?
As a student, you may not have ever coded an Arduino before. You may not have assembled a robotics kit. But you know what? No matter where you're from, you've probably encountered problems. And in fact, the kids that are most in need of educational support are usually the kids that have encountered the most problems. And so I really try to encourage kids to not think about technology gratuitously. You're not just doing this to assemble something techie. You're trying to solve real-world problems to make people's lives better, happier, safer, and more fulfilling.
In today's discussion and the announcement, there was there were many special comments about the importance of equity and also building community. Can you share how your programs advance educational equity?
Microsoft in the City of Houston, through the Mayor's Complete Communities and Microsoft's focus on digital equity, really targeted the most at-risk regions of the community and looked at who are the kids that most need these types of interventions and how can we bring this to them in a way that's going to resonate, that's meaningful, and that's accessible. You can try to force STEM education on kids. If it's not interesting for them, they're not going to do it. I learned to build computers because I like to play video games. And I was poor, so I lived in a trailer in Cut and Shoot, Texas. When our front door fell off, we couldn't afford to replace it, so we put a plywood board on it. So I didn't have the money to buy a computer. If I wanted to play games, I had to learn to build them. Probably the best piece of advice I could give anyone, a kid, an adult, is figure out who you are and unapologetically embrace who you are. Figure out what makes you tick. What do you like? What's fun for you? And how can you make a life out of that? And so much of that is about the empowerment, it's about education, but it's also about confidence and being confident in pursuing things that are interesting and fun for you. And when you do that, money follows, education follows, success follows. But figure out who you are and don't be afraid to embrace that.
Houston is our home. It's the city on the bayou that is being transformed to Silicon Bayou. As Professor Klineberg's book points out, the oil bust of the 1980s transformed us into this beautifully diverse community that we are today. As Mustafa Tamiz says, we're a city of conveners. Our greatest strength is in our people, and we must improve our educational system and drive educational equity to remain competitive in the 21st century. Today, we highlighted Microsoft's investment in Houston with its ambitious and collaborative alliance and Global Skills Initiative. The COVID-19 crisis has shined a spotlight on the need for equity and opportunity for all. It has allowed us to question our traditional paradigms. It demands us to develop new cooperative, collaborative, and coordinated approaches to create new, more equitable systems and structures. During our talk with Professor Klineberg, he reminded us of the words of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., which we'll end with today. We are now faced with the fact that tomorrow is today. We are confronted with the fierce urgency of now. In this unfolding conundrum of life and history, there is such a thing as being too late. This is no time for apathy or complacency. This is a time for vigorous and positive action. Be well, stay safe, and see you again soon.